Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Okay, today let's talk about goals. All right, I'm going to pause just for a second there, let everybody roll their eyes because I know that just kind of drives people crazy. Everybody thinks they understand goals. And, you know, for the most part, I think we do, but you got to ask yourself, are you really good at hitting your goals? And it certainly interplays with respect to relationships and networking because we have goals around those things as well, or should. So goals. If you're in business, you've got goals, right? Or someone has them for you, such as a driven boss or maybe that significant other who depends upon you in whole or in part to help you maintain a household, whatever it is. Plan a vacation, raise kids, go out to dinner on Saturday night, whatever it is. But there are goals that are kind of behind that. So we all have goals in business, or we should have goals, and we know that. And so, as I alluded to before, we should also probably have goals with respect to our networking. And that might be something that's foreign to you or just a revelation, if you will. But there should be some sort of mindset with respect to, or some sort of goal with respect to what you hope to contribute to your network. What are the things you're going to do for your network? And then the flip side, of course, and this probably comes first, you have to have goals for what you want to try and get out of your network. Shouldn't just be out there willy-nilly running around to events and doing things, having Zoom calls or whatever, without some sort of sense as to where that's leading to, what you're hoping to get from it. And I'm not necessarily indicating or implying that you should be keeping score, but there needs to be a method to your madness, a purpose behind what you're trying to accomplish. And goals certainly help with that. And you know, networking is an important part of your overall success. And so if you have goals for your overall success, you ought to have goals for your networking. Again, I'm sure I'm getting rolling eyes, and some people who have just out and out turned this off because it's like, yeah, I've heard enough about goals. I don't want to hear any more about goals. Fair enough, but stick with me if you will. So goals are important. We should all have them. And that said, they should be SMART goals, right? We hear that, and it's something that gets everyone's kind of groaning. SMART goals. They need to be measurable. They need to be achievable. They need to be relevant, and they need to be time-bound. So measurable meaning, or specific meaning, you need to talk to something specific. I'm going to generate this many sales this year. And that's got to be something that's measurable. It can't be something that's kind of touchy-feely. I want to feel a whole lot better about I want to be a lot happier at the end of the year than I am right now. It's got to be something that's achievable. You know, you can't say, well, I'm going to be a billionaire by the end of the year. I don't have two nickels to rub together. You know, that's probably not achievable. Lofty, go for it, dude. But probably not achievable. And I find that when goals are too low and you hit them too easy, it's almost like having goals and having a goal that's so lofty that there's no way in God's green earth you're going to hit it. It's unachievable or easily achievable. It's almost like not having a goal. Relevant, the goal needs to be relevant to where you're headed. You know, if you have a goal that's related to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that's not relevant. You know, sales is something that's relevant to your success. Spending time with your, significant other or family is something that's significant to your personal well-being. Those things are relevant. Number of times you're going to recycle paper. I don't know. I don't know if that's relevant. Maybe there's an argument that it is. But the goals need to be relevant, and they need to be time bound, meaning that the goal needs to there needs to be an end to it. Deadlines drive results. Heard that all through business school. Deadlines drive results. And it's very true. There's a deadline out there. You're going to be pushing to hit that deadline. If you have a goal of making X number of sales and then there's not a deadline, well, then there's really nothing pressing you. A lot of things happen at the end of fiscal years. A lot of things happen towards the end of calendar years. A lot of things happen towards the due date for a term paper. Deadlines drive results. And along those lines, studies have shown that shorter term goals, say for a month or a quarter, are much more effective than goals that run for longer, say a year out. There's a great book out there called The 12-Week Year. I highly recommend. But what that book is all about is about having goals that are quarterly in nature, 3 months, little sprints. If you hit all those quarters, you're going to have a great year. And the reason for that is what they found is that when companies had really lofty year-long goals, is that, if let's say by the end of December you're going to have X number of sales, and it's smart, it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, it's time-bound, it's as far as achievable, it's lofty. You're going to have to go to make it happen. Well, what happens in January, February, and March is like, we're not gonna do anything. We got all year. And I see this in AmSpirit. Chapters will set goals as to where their membership will be at the end of the year. And what I find invariably is that they don't work out. We're going to be 5 members bigger by the end of the year. But it's only January. We don't need to worry about it. It's still only February. We don't need to worry about it. March, okay. Then you start getting into April and May, and you're getting into spring breaks and kids getting out of school in June, and then you've got the summer months. Before you know it, it's September. It's Labor Day. And you kind of have this awakening. It's like, oh my gosh, we said we were going to do this, and you spend all of September trying to gear up, and you're ready to roll in October, and you're finally getting your footing, and then you get into mid-November, and what happens? Well, you start getting into Thanksgiving, and depending upon where Thanksgiving falls, it's a short little, well, no matter where it falls, it's a short sprint to the Christmas holiday or the holiday season, and pretty much the year's done, and goals aren't hit. But if the goals are quarterly, what are we going to do this quarter? What are we going to try and achieve this quarter? It's like we got to get going because it's coming fast. The quarter's already started, and it's going to be over before you know it. Same thing with the monthly goal. I want to get this done by the end of the month. You need to move. So having those shorter term goals are much more powerful than a longer term goal. If you give yourself a goal of losing 100 pounds in 5 years, you'll probably still be overweight 5 years from now. But if you say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds this year, or I'm going to lose 3 pounds or 4 pounds this quarter or something like that, you kind of chunk it down, you're going to be much more successful along the way. But beyond, just the time bound and the timing, you're better off to have your goals written out and review them often. Put them in writing, review them. I know people who write them every week, look at them every week, refine them. Maybe you want to adjust them depending upon, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to make $1 million sales this year. I'm just not. Things intervene. I'm not. So I'm going to kind of adjust it back because if it becomes unattainable, if you can't achieve it, then you're not going to be driving towards it. So you might want to adjust it one way or the other, or it could go the other way. Oh my gosh, it's October. I hit $1 million. I'm going to push. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. Now, I know there are corporate types out there that say, yeah, well, my boss gave me the $1 million goal, and so I'm going to hit it, and I'm just going to slack for the rest of the year because if I do too much, they're just going to give me a higher goal next year. I'm going to kind of sandbag, and I'll get ready to hit it hard in January. That's fine. That's a corporate mentality. In the small business world, people they're not going to wait. That business might not be there, so you might want to grab it while you can. But I understand that's a different mentality. And then the other thing with respect to goals is that you're best when you go public with them, when you let other people know that what you're trying to do. I'm trying to trying to make President's Club this year, or I'm, trying to grow our membership by this amount. Because what that does is it creates really powerful psychological forces that kind of subconsciously spur you on. I tell the story years ago. I was going to run a marathon, and I told a lot of people I was going to run a marathon. I'm going to let people know I'm running a marathon. I'm training for a marathon. And I got hurt about 6 weeks before the marathon. Hurt my back. Couldn't do anything. Couldn't walk. Couldn't do anything. When I say I couldn't walk, I couldn't go out walking. I could walk. I walked to the car. I wasn't totally invalid, but I couldn't run for a month. And I just waited a month. And then 2 weeks before the marathon, I'm like, you know what? I feel better. I'm going to do this. It's not going to be pretty, but I'm going to do it because, I told all these people. Now, if I hadn't told all those people, it would have been easy for me to just kind of bag out and say, yeah, I hurt my back, and just make that excuse. So we all understand goals. We understand all those things I've talked about, but we often don't achieve them, right? I mean, think about it. You don't achieve them, and that's frustrating and demoralizing. And so what I want to talk about now is how we can kind of end this frustration. There are really two types of goals out there. There are result goals, and then there are activity goals. Result goals are focused on the outcomes you want to achieve. For example, a result goal might be to have 6 new clients in 3 months, right? That's specific, measurable. It's a SMART goal. We won't go through all of that. 6 new clients in 3 months. An activity goal, on the other hand, is focused on actions or activities that you need to undertake to achieve your desired outcomes. So, for example, an activity goal might be to invite 24 non-clients to have lunch or coffee with you in 3 months. Now, the difference between these two types of goals is very important. With result goals, you don't have absolute control over whether the outcome happens. I mean, think about it. Now, using my example, there are lots of intervening reasons why someone might not become a client. And we all know that, right? It happens. The economy, I mean, I've had prospects literally die. Not to not do business with me, but just things happen in life. People get sick, they go out of business, they win the lottery, whatever it is. And so you don't have total control over that. So if your goal is to get 6 new clients in 3 months, that's a great goal. It is a great goal. There's nothing wrong with it, but you don't have total control over it. And sometimes that can feel a little hopeless depending upon the situation. Activity goals, on the other hand, are focused on the actions or activities. And so you have direct and absolute control over whether you complete the activity. For example, you either make 24 invitations or you don't. All you're doing is you're inviting 24 non-clients to have lunch or coffee with you in 3 months. That's totally in your control. You can sit down and say, you know what? I'm going to every weekend I'm going to sit down. I'm going to identify so many targets. I'm going to really try and find good targets, and then Monday I'm going to send the invites out. And I'm going to get these things out. But you might say, well, I can get those out, right away. I'm talking about really digging into it and finding good people that are reasonable prospects or connected to reasonable prospects. Those are the people you're going to try and have conversations with. The neat thing, however, is that you can use your activity goals to increase the likelihood of achieving result goals. So following the example that I've been sharing, if you invite those 24 non-clients to lunch or coffee, and again, that's something you have total control over. Not all are going to accept. We know that. But many will. Let's say 18 do. Let's say you have 18 lunches that you've set up. You invited 24, 18 agree to have lunch with you. Maybe the other 6 will be another time and place. But that interaction will greatly increase the likelihood that you get 6 new clients in 3 months. Simple, right? If you don't have control over the result goal, but you have control over the activity goal. Now, there's a flyer that's floating around AmSpirit Business Connections. It was developed by one of our franchisees, Shannon Walker. And if you want a copy of it, reach out to me. Just email me, frankagan@amspirit.com, and I'll get you a copy. AmSpirit members have access to it on the website. But what it does is it just kind of walks you through that mentality. You just write down your goal. Well, what's your goal? And then you just have to answer the simple question. Do you have absolute control over completion of that goal? Yes or no? If it's yes, then what are you going to be doing to just making sure that you see it through? Because it's entirely possible that, using my example, invite 24 people to lunch or coffee, you just might not see it through. Or is it something you don't have absolute control over? I was getting 6 new clients. You don't have absolute control over that. So if you don't have absolute control over that, then you need to dig into what are the activities that you can undertake to achieve those goals. And so you head down that decision path and you start brainstorming the things that you can be doing. I invite people to coffee or lunch. We talked about that. I can be doing so much posting on social media. I can be doing, getting out and doing, interviews, going and giving speeches, going to networking events, things like that. You can, here are all sorts of activities. And then you can set goals around those particular activities. And then you see those goals through, so you set those goals, and then you just need to kind of lead you back up to, okay, what are you going to do to see those activities through? It's kind of I don't want to say nothing's foolproof, right? But what it does is it puts you in a situation where you have more control over your situation. There's less hopelessness with it. If I set a goal of, hey, I'm going to have so many franchisees this year, in a way that's kind of a hopeless goal because it's hard for me to determine, okay, where is this going to, how am I going to make this happen? I just can't have that goal. I've got to have activities that support that goal. And I need to have goals around those activities, and those activities are things that I have absolute control over. And so I feel much more hopeful having that absolute control over those activities. And so that's the difference between activity goals and result goals. Goals are important. They're both important. They're both vital to success. But one you're going to have control over, one you're going to have a degree of enthusiasm and be energized by, and not the other one's not. Obviously we need outcomes. You just can't have activity without outcomes. But just pinning your hopes on an outcome that you really have no control over can be demoralizing. And in the end, that's where it becomes frustrating. So think about that process. Again, if you want that flyer, reach out to me at frankagan@amspirit.com, and I will certainly get it to you.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.